video on making sourdough bread with half wholemeal, whole grain flour and normal white flour. So I reckon, so it's going to be 250 grams of the wholemeal whole grain flour and 250 grams of the plain white flour. Well, not plain white flour, strong white flour. I think there's going to be 25 grams worth of bran that I'm going to sift out, bran and whole grain that we're going to sift out. So I'm going to weigh out 275 grams of flour, and then we'll do a mixture of both, a little bit of that, but most of this, because it's extra strong. So we'll sieve it out and we'll see what kind of ratio we've got. But I reckon it'll be 25 grams worth of bran in there. I just like to sieve it out because it just makes it a little bit easier to knead, and bran that you sieve out isn't actually flour, and we want taking too much out, and yeah, kind of difficult to kind of, so it's not flour, so therefore if you're using a set recipe for bread, it's just, I can't explain it at all because my brain's gone. But anyway, I'll just sieve it out because it's not flour, it's bran, and it's like adding nuts and things to things. So you wouldn't add the nuts that you'd put in a cake. You wouldn't deduct the weight of the nuts off the flour, if that makes sense. You just have out your normal weight of your flour, and then the nuts would be something you add extra. So I kind of see that's my reasoning with the flour. So we'll go for the fine sieve first, and we'll see how much we sieve out. It might sieve out a bit too much. It's on 0. So once I've sieved it, there should be 250 grams of flour. Welcome to the Sieving channel on YouTube. A nice relaxing way to spend a snowy day. Keep going. Oh, damn, 236, 237, 240. Oh, 10 grams out. Really guessed it. So, we'll make up the rest with the, I don't think 10 grams is going to make that much difference, so we'll make up the rest with the white flour. So we'll take this to 250 grams. As you can see, some of the bran's kind of sifted through, but that's alright. So this is super strong white bread flour. Just not getting the scales right this today. There we go, 500. That out of the way, and then we've got starter. It's a little bit crusty on top because it's been out all night, but it's fine. It's nice and active. So we want 300 grams of starter, which will take us up to 800. Okay, what's that? Oh, quite a bit more. That's there, and I've already weighed out the water. Damn, will we have enough starter? Ah, 1 gram out, that'll fine. I'm not going to add any more. We'll just use that bit that I've got on my finger, which will be the gram. So, 275 grams of water, and then good pinch of salt. So mix these together. I'll use both hands, make a mess of myself. Mix these together and then let it sit for an hour, which what that does is it lets all the water from the starter and that we've added properly soak into all the flour, and therefore what we can do is generally with sourdough, it's quite a wet dough, so you want to be able to get as much water into it as possible. So by letting it rest for an hour and all the water soak into the flour, you can actually add more water than you would normally do with a normal kind of bread making process. I'm sure that's the reasoning behind it. There's probably another reason as well. It's probably one of those things that you do that there's actually lots of different reasons why you do it, rather than just one reason. But I'm sure that's the reason. All the videos I've watched on sourdough and bread making, that seems to be the reason why people do it. What we'll do is we leave that for an hour, or maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on what we've got on to do. It's going to get to like a saturation point where the flour's not going to soak up any more water. So that's not, an hour's about right, but 2 hours wouldn't do any harm. And then we're going to knead it for 10 minutes, and then we'll add the bran back. Will we? Or will we do that before we bake it? I can't remember. I'll have to rewatch the other video that I made on wholemeal flour. I can't remember what I did last time. Certainly after I kneaded it. We'll see. So that's there. We'll put a shower cap on the top of that just to stop it from drying out and losing moisture. So get these bits off hands. Actually, what you can do, if your hands are covered in dough and things, water's one way to get rid of dough on your hands, but you can dip your hands. How can I do this? I'll show you. So if like a today's top tip, have that out of the way, that'll be fine. You can dip your hands in a bit of flour, try not to make a mess of things, and then rub your hands together, and the dry flour will make the dough on your hands not as sticky, and you can easily rub off that excess dough. So there's today's top tip. And also, because flour is a mild abrasive, they use it to clean copper pans in kitchens. Mix a mixture of flour and water, if I remember rightly. In the fancy kitchens that used to use copper, they used to use flour and water to get all the gunk off them. So a bit of flour, and that removes the moisture, most of the dough off your hands. So there we go, that's stopped. Leave that for an hour, and then we'll be back, maybe in an hour and a half, maybe in 2 hours. We'll see how we go. The dough has had an hour and a bit, probably closer to 2 hours, of the water absorbing into it. There is a proper French name for it. I can't remember what the name is. So we're going to knead now, and I've also checked on my other wholemeal flour making, wholemeal bread flour making recipe, and I added the sieved out grains after I'd kneaded it. So that's what we'll do. The other video before, the dough was very wet after I'd kneaded it. I'm thinking because it's a 50-50 mix of normal white strong flour and wholemeal flour, it will be not as wet. It'll be a lot easier to work with. So we'll see how we go. I'm not going to show you 10 minutes of kneading, but we'll quickly go through. This is the first video you ever watch of bread making. I better show you how I knead. There's different ways of kneading, but I basically take some of the dough and push back, and then around, and around, and around, and it starts to come together. But it's all about getting the gluten activated in the dough, in the flour, and then once you've got the gluten active, that sort of gives you the nice air pockets in the bread. So we need to activate the dough, and by moving it around like this and like that, different ways of doing it, different chefs and bakers do it different ways. I find this works for me. You activate the gluten in the flour, which is not something that you want to do when you're making pastry, but certainly something you want to do when you're making bread. So that's it for now. I'm not going to show you 10 minutes of kneading, although there'll be videos somewhere available of nice relaxing videos of people kneading bread. This is not that video. Oh, 10 minutes of kneading. The dough is soft, but not super soft as it was the first time I made 100% wholemeal whole wheat flour. But as you can see, it's come together a lot better. It's just that it was a lot better, but then I started the phone. So it tends to relax as soon as you stop kneading it. and wants to not be formed into a nice ball. So that's kind of what there it was at when I stopped kneading. So we will add the bran and the whole grains back now, which will just be a case of slowly working it in. We'll see how this loaf turns out. It's obviously going to be a lot drier. I don't know. Will it be drier? I did have a think about it. I had a thought about this, and then obviously I've lost that thought because I've done something else since then. So will it be drier than the yeah, it's going to be drier than a normal white sourdough, and it'll probably be a little bit drier than the whole wheat one, because we're adding all that dry material back into the flour, which is going to hear the thing pinging on the floor, which is going to soak up some of the moisture from the bread. So that's kind of quite sticky at the moment, but once everything is mixed in, and once after it's proved, everything will be certainly a lot firmer. So we'll see how it goes. So, ooh, those bits, I'm going to miss anything. So that in the bowl, and that's scraping there as well. So, oh, don't want to miss that. Right, so shower cap on, because we don't like plastic waste. That will now prove at room temperature for 8 hours, 12 hours, 14, 15 hours, until it's basically doubled in size. Oh, missed some, what we call it. I've missed some of the bran, which I don't want to. I hate waste. That's fine. So we'll prove it until it's doubled in size. There will be a chart of how quickly bread rises at which temperature and what temperature optimizes growth in the yeast and all that kind of stuff. But I don't work that way. I just kind of, when it's doubled inside, it's doubled in size. That might be 6 hours, that might be 8 hours, that might be 15 hours, that might be 24 hours, depending on the room and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so we're back when it's doubled in size. So the bread has been proving for over 12 hours. Can't exactly remember how long it's proved, but it's doubled in size. So we'll knock it back and we'll put it in the proving basket. So you can see there, it's all nice and raised and doubled in size. So we'll knock the air out of it and put it in the proving basket, and then it can just sit somewhere cool for a few hours. I'm not looking for too much of a rise from this next process, because most of the rise with sourdough comes when you cook it in the oven. So knock the kind of air out of that. I'm not going to fancy form it into fancy balls or anything like that, or fold it under. So proving basket, which is just a bowl with a flat cotton cloth in it, not bobbly like toweling, just a flat cotton cloth tied round, and then plain flour. I'm not going to waste strong flour with dusting in there. It just seems a bit of a waste when cheap flour is cheap and bread flour is more expensive. So plonk that in there, bit of flour on top so it doesn't stick to the shower cap. So shower cap on, and it's just going to sit somewhere cool for the next 6 hours, and then we'll give it a bake. So the bread has had 6-7 hours, maybe even 8 in a cool place. It's risen slightly, as we can see there, just those cracks in the flour show, and there's a few air bubbles wanting to pop through. So it's risen enough now that, not too much, but it's risen enough and it's fermented enough that it's now ready to go into the oven. So, board on top of the worktop, because we've got the cast iron pot, and it's been in the oven for half an hour, getting really hot. It's on the hottest temperature the oven goes, and it's on fan as well. So cast iron pot's been in there since the start, so it's nice and hot. So, and we've got our little knife ready just to score on top of the bread. So, quickly. Cast iron pot out of the oven. Plop. Bread in. Oh, maybe I should have floured the bottom of the bread, but it'll be fine. So, quick score across top of the bread, which will give us a nice split. Lid on, back in the oven. Set the timer for 20 minutes, and then after the 20 minutes is up, we'll take it out of the cast iron pot. We'll put it back, the bread back in the oven, not the cast iron pot, because that will keep the oven too hot. It won't allow the oven to cool down too quickly, and we'll turn it down to about 180, and then that will allow the crust to properly set, and we'll get a nicer bread on the outside. We can't carry on cooking it at full whack because the outside of the bread will go burnt, and the inside won't be as cooked as we want. So 20 minutes, and then we'll depot the bread. 20 minutes is up, so we'll get this out of the oven. Turn the oven down to 80. There we go, it's got a nice bit of rise to it. So carefully get this out of the pot and get the bread in the oven without the pot. So, bread in the oven for another 30, 35, 40 minutes, something like that, and then we'll come back and it'll be ready, and then we'll let it cool, and then we'll cut into it. The loaf is now done. So there we go, as we can see, nice and crispy, nice and hollow sounding, so we know that's ready. Need to put it on a cooling rack and let it go cold for at least, not go cold, but cool for at least half an hour. We can't cut into it straight away, otherwise it's just going to make a mess of the bread, so it just needs a little bit of time to rest and cool down a little bit before we carve into it. And we'll carve into it and we'll see what difference a 50-50 white and wholemeal bread mix makes. The bread is now cooled enough to cut into, so which way we're going to go? We'll go this way. And we'll have a look inside and see what the air pockets are like. It feels nice and light, so it should be a good loaf. Looks, well, it's obviously lighter than in colour than the full wholemeal, but let's have a look at the inside. Not that much difference. Not that much difference. Still nice open texture to the bread, but no huge air pockets like there is with 100% white bread. So, not sure what to make of that. Obviously, wholemeal bread is better for you. Wholemeal bread flour tends to be a little bit more expensive, so if you were kind of wanting to cut your costs down, I would recommend like a 50-50 split of white and wholemeal and whole grain. But there you go, it's alright there. Yeah, nice open grain. I'm pretty happy with that. I will taste it later, but I'm pretty much going to give that to my mum, I think, along with something else that I've got for her. So that, yeah, there we go, that's success. I don't think I need to, next time I make some brown bread, it'll be just to use up that flour. It's alright, it's brown bread, but I don't eat that much bread, so if I don't eat that much bread, I tend to want the bread exactly that I want, which is normally white bread. As a treat, if it's going to be bread's going to be a treat for me, then won't be kind of, so I'm certainly going to want my white bread. So there we go, 50-50 split of brown bread, and still not kind of the open grain that we get with and air pockets that we get with white bread, but still good, nice loaf. There we go.